several of the
Sorry, Jamie.
No problem. Working with several of the Immersion IB transfers that come to Washington Liberty, I've always been concerned with. I'm just so happy to have how well the kids are prepared and how well they do, but they often reflect on the lack of diversity in their program. So I would like to participate and support the program that way.
Thank you, James. Karina?
She was here.
I am here. Hi, everybody. Good evening. My name is Karina Cornell, and I am at the coordinator at the Welcome Center Language Services Registration Center. I've been in Arlington. I believe this is my 30th year. And I've been, a teacher at many grade levels. I've been an assistant principal, a principal, and now I've been a central office for the last 4 years. Part of the reason why I'm part of this committee is because I'm in charge of the application process and the lotteries for the Immersion program.
Great. Jessica, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jessica Panfil, the principal of Claremont Immersion Elementary. Just on a personal note, I have 2 daughters, and one attended Key and one attended Claremont. So I'm excited to begin this process and thank Jonathan for leading us through it.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. Marlene.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Marlene Perdomo, principal at Escuela Key Elementary. Very excited to be part of the process. I've been associated with the Immersion program for many, many years. Started as a teacher at Key, and now very proud to be principal of this school. So thank you, everyone, for participating.
Great. Thank you, Marlene. Kristen.
Hi, Kristen Haldeman. I'm Director of Transportation Planning for APS, and part of this process because transportation will be delivering the students to wherever we decide to take them or put them rather.
Great. Thank you, Kristen. Heidi.
Hi, I'm Heidi Heim. I have been a special ed teacher at Key School for 27 years, and I'm here because I want to make sure that we have, good decisions made about where the boundaries are, and because Marlene asked me to help.
Great, thanks, Heidi. Okay, we're going to transition to the parents. And again, parents, just introduce your name, the community you represent, your why for being on the committee, and a strategy you'd use to help ensure the feedback represents the stakeholders you represent. Starting with Claremont, Emily, would you introduce yourself to the group?
Hi, I'm Emily Remus. I have 4 sons, and the 2 oldest are at Claremont. It's been a really wonderful experience for us. And so, I just want to make sure that the program, do what I can to help the program stay strong and sort of represent different people in the community. I should say our home school is Oak Ridge. Our neighborhood school is Oak Ridge. And our PTA is really wonderful. And even from last year, we have just a lot of parent networks set up through WhatsApp groups and emails, listservs, membership directory. So I think those are some of the ways that we'll try to engage the parent community.
Great. Thank you, Emily. Paula?
Hello, my name is Paula Cordero. I am from Costa Rica, so I'm a native Spanish speaker. So I'm very interested in the program to be strong and have the best feeder structure. Our neighborhood school is Takaho, so we are in the very far northwest of the county, very far from Claremont, but we love the community. I have 2 sons, one in 2nd grade and one in kindergarten in Claremont. I want to echo what Emily said. We have a very strong network with parents, WhatsApp groups in Spanish and English. So we try to engage with all those means, the Facebook group as well, and the listserv. So we'll be using all means, and even coffee type activities to engage in person and so on.
Thank you, Paula. Rachel?
Hi, Hi, I'm Rachel Berkey. I have a kindergartner and a second grader at Claremont. And then I have one who will be an APS in 4 more years. And I live in the Randolph, that's my neighborhood school, but I actually live in Douglas Park, which I think is one of the feeds to the most elementary schools of all the civic associations. So we have Drew, Randolph, Barcroft. Oh, and I'm totally, I think that might actually be it now. We used to also feed Patrick Henry and Hoffman Boston, but they reduced us a little bit with the last boundary change. So we have a pretty diverse community, and I like seeing that represented not only in our neighborhood schools, but also at Claremont. So I think I kind of feel what James was saying about how can we make sure our community is diverse as well.
Thank you, Rachel. Moving on to the Escuela Key community, Ethan.
Buenas noches, mucho gusto. My name is Ethan. Good to meet you all. I am representing Key, and my home school is Glebe Elementary, and certainly very interested in maintaining the balance between English and Spanish speakers. We speak Spanish at home and English on the street, and so excited to be involved in this process, understand how you go about your business, and also provide some suggestions. We did a lot of work on our side talking about Key and where the students came from when we were moving before. And I wanted to bring some of that knowledge and conversation to this committee to see how we could potentially help get the word out more and also structure things to keep that balance intact.
Great. Thank you, Ethan. Tanya?
Good evening. First, let me apologize for my cave that I'm in. I'm sitting outside a child's activity because I am a mom of 3. And so, we're constantly getting people places and things like that. So I apologize. My name is Tanya Murphy. I am a 4th grade parent at Key, Escuela Key. We are also a military family. So we transferred into Key in 2nd grade. We actually came down and visited. We interviewed at Claremont. We also participated in the process at Key. So I am interested in participating in this process as a representative of the families that are not an APS forever and ever, or have not been an APS forever and ever. And so a lot of times when these boundary processes change as a military family, you choose a home very carefully. I very carefully chose my home because it fed into TJ and Wakefield and Key, and it was very selective. And so when boundaries change after you've put that much work into getting your kids where they need to be and where it's going to be the best place for them, it's very hard as a military family. And so I would like to bring that perspective and that insight to the group. I think that is often missing in schools in general, but particularly when you talk about option programs, because it's not often that you have children transferring in and out of them. But when you do, a lot of times it is a military or State Department family. So I think that's an important perspective to keep in mind whenever you're talking about changing boundaries.
Thank you, Tanya, for that. Susie?
Yes, Susie Manazza. I'm a Key parent. I have a daughter in 5th grade and I have a son in high school at Yorktown. Similar to Tanya, we our family who, we lived abroad most of our lives. The kids were born abroad. We were with the UN at that time. We're not State Department. And so I also bring that kind of perspective of moving the kids to schools and, where a lot of kids come and go, and they have really some great systems there that maybe we can learn from. And I'm also part of the PTA. I'm the external affairs person there. And so I think I can help bring the message and the communication from this team back to the community through the PTA channels. And my school we are in the Cardinal, I think right now, part.
Great. Thank you, Susie. Jillian.
Yes, thank you. I'm also a mom of 3 and I'm doing the dishes, which is very exciting. I have 3 at Key in 1st, 3rd, and 5th this year. And we are big proponents of the Immersion program, especially after having an experience helping some friends who immigrated into this country and their daughter didn't speak English, and seeing the impact that Immersion had in her ability to learn English, even after she had been here for a year and other public schools had not been as successful in helping her learn English. as well as have more fluency and more literacy in her native language of Spanish, which sort of cemented my passion for the Immersion program. So I'm here partially from that hat, partially from, like Ethan mentioned, during the discussions about moving Key, we did a lot of work and a lot of conversations with our community about where it made sense to be located, to be able to draw, to be able to serve a Spanish-speaking population and have a diverse student body. Those are both, I think, priorities for me and many of my fellow Key parents. And we live in Cherrydale in the Science Focus attendance zone. Oh, and I also do a lot of transportation advocacy and have thought a lot about transportation as it relates to schools.
Great, thank you, Jillian. Melania.
Hi, my name is Melania Serenero, and I have 3 children in APS. 2 of my girls are at Gunston, so I'm a Gunston rep, but I have to come clean. I'm also the Claremont PTA president. I have a kindergartner starting this year. So I am extremely interested in this boundary process. We at Claremont, right before COVID, we were strongly advocating for the visioning, and I was very involved with that. So I'm a huge advocate. I'm also from Costa Rica, so I'm a huge advocate of the immersion program for everybody. And I've seen with myself, I went through an English immersion program, just the difference it can make in language acquisition and your worldview. I am actually from the Fairlington neighborhood, and I think that's it.
Thanks, Melania. I apologize if I say your name wrong, but Adon?
Yes, you said correctly. Hi, I'm Adon Huang. I have 2 children, twins, who went through the Key program and now are at Gunston, 8th graders. And I hope they continue in immersion onward and onward. We stumbled into immersion and have just been, benefited and been amazed and loved the program so much. I would love to see the program. I think the immersion program at APS is really the crown jewel of APS, and oftentimes it makes me sad that the system does not treat it as such. So I am here just to advocate for Gunston, for Key School, as well as all the other immersion schools to the best of my abilities. And our home school is Barrett.
Great, thank you, Adon. Transitioning to Wakefield now, Anna Carolina.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Ana Carolina. I apologize, but my English is so-so. I'm from Venezuela. I live in Barcroft. I have 2 children in Wakefield, one in 10th grade and the other one in 9th grade. I'm in the community because I came 7 years ago to the United States, and my kids were in Key School, and they've been in all the progress of immersion program. And I really appreciate, and I'm blessed to have this program here, and I want that everybody have the benefits for them. I believe that when the program starts, like in Gunston and then to Wakefield, people start to get out of the program, and I want to not to happen and to recover that the people get engaged with the program in older years, and basically, yeah, that's part of it.
Thank you, Anna. Mary.
Hi, I'm Mary. I have 2 daughters at Wakefield who went through Key and Gunston. At the time in elementary school, I lived in the Key neighborhood, the old Key neighborhood. Now live in the Abingdon neighborhood, but I've never attended there, so I can't really speak to that. Perhaps representing something I haven't heard yet of people who don't choose to continue in immersion. I've seen people fall off after elementary school and after middle school. So perhaps bringing that perspective of friends who chose neighborhood schools or other options over that to this process.
Thank you, Mary. And we also have a community representative. We have in Arlington, as many know, several advisory committees, and one is the Facility Advisory Council. And this feeder work does relate to school, facilities and capacity. And so we were fortunate that on that advisory, there's also an immersion parent. And so I'm going to let Heather introduce herself, but that is the role in which she's here with us. So Heather, would you say hello?
Hi, as Jonathan said, I serve on the Facilities Advisory Committee, and right now I think, the only parent on there with kids in immersion. I have a 7th grader at Gunston who went through Key, and I have a current 4th grader, and we are in the Discovery Attendance Zone. And my purpose in being here is to kind of take any concerns that come about relating to the buildings, the facilities, and communicate those back to the FAC. And we have monthly meetings, so I'll be in communication with this group and with the FAC each month. So I'll be able to bring feedback both ways. And I'm a huge proponent of the immersion program. My kids love it. My son is back in Gunston after all virtual last year, so he's having a great time. And my 4th grader, we have great teachers again this year, and she's very excited to be back. So
great.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you, Heather, and thank you, everyone. Well, I'm going to project the agenda and jump right in. I did email it to everyone as well, but I will project all the materials that we'll look at tonight. But you do have a copy in your email in case anyone wants to open it up as well. So let me start sharing. And I will give it a second to populate. Is the font size, is it showing, and is the font size large enough for everyone? Good. Little thumbs up. Good. Good. Thank you.
Yep, looks
okay.
good.
Perfect. So our working agreements as a committee, we're meeting 3, maybe 4 times. So it's really important that everyone is here at all meetings. We're going to work as a committee to develop a recommendation to APS staff. Allow all voices and perspectives to be heard and stay open to new ideas. Keep your school community informed of the work. Solicit feedback from your community. Again, we'll provide you with some data collection tools and information to bring back. Share that feedback with the committee, and ultimately we all as a committee respect the final recommendation that this committee makes. Norms of collaboration. This is a document from a training that many APS staff we've kind of been through with adaptive schools. So pausing, kind of thinking, allows time for thinking and enhances the dialogue and discussion. Paraphrasing each other's ideas or to help everyone feel heard and understanding as they converse and make decisions. Posing questions to one another. Putting ideas on the table, that we're going to be doing a lot of that. We want to hear really a diverse range of perspectives and ideas. Providing data, that's really more of my job, but when you're citing and making an opinion or a statement, if there's some data that supports your opinion, that's always welcome. Paying attention to yourself and others in terms of how things are said and how others are responding is important. And lastly, this is really important, presuming positive intentions. We all here are committed to the immersion program and want the best for our students, and kind of operating through that lens and presuming that at all times. So our charge to the committee, and as I shared, I will briefly recap, we really want to support the 2-way model, which recommended by the task force. Again, 50% heritage or native speakers, 50% English speakers and non-Spanish English speaking learners. We obviously have an imbalance now, and one of the jobs is to try to really strive to help achieve this on a consistent basis. And hopefully with this work, we will. Reduce the demands on transportation services and make sure what we recommend is operationally feasible. And we'll share some of the parameters later in this dialogue. Again, the closer the students are to their school, the more quickly buses can make their trips and get students to school on time. This contributes to efficiency and shorter trips, and also allows kids to get there. Manageable enrollment. Key and Claremont have different capacity levels. We need to be mindful of that and make sure that we create a system that's sustainable in that regard. Equity and access. So as we think about which schools might switch or get assigned, thinking about the modes of transportation available to those students and families to access the school. We want to make sure that all families have a chance and an ability to reach their child's school. And priorities given to those communities with the most transportation challenges or the greatest need for transportation. We want to promote demographic diversity at Key and Claremont, and this is in regards to the applicant pool and the role the feeder structure plays. And lastly, addressing how this proposal will treat current immersion students. So we are going to have to, this committee will make a recommendation on grandfathering. If any of the current feeder schools are changed, how we will handle the current students who may become outside of feeder, as well as new immersion students. I'll pause if anyone, does anyone have any questions on the charge to the committee or the goals? Ethan.
Thanks. This is just, so you're talking a lot about changing which feeder schools go in to what elementary or immersion program. I've been thinking a lot about, what if the population just isn't being communicated with are we thinking about talking about resources and programs to try to reach folks in those communities to give them the real benefits of this immersion program? Like that's really an interesting area for me.
Ethan, that's a great point. Yes, thank you for raising that. And so everyone is aware, there's a process, the immersion visioning process, which is instructionally focused. Elizabeth Harrington, the supervisor of world languages, that committee has had some meetings, and an update will be coming to the community soon, but that's actually the next topic on their agenda, is to talk about recruitment for the immersion program. So we're not going to handle that as much. We're going to really be digging deep into data. That is a very significant and legitimate point and something that needs to be addressed. And the visioning process, which there are representatives from all of the same communities that are here tonight, are involved in that as well. So
Okay.
that work is taking place, but thank you for bringing that up.
Sure, thanks. I mean, I do think that penetration issue is probably, it's going to have a bigger slice of the pie than anything that we discussed, and if that's not within our scope. So I'd like, if there's possibility to inform or provide information about perspective on that, I'd love to. So
I can bring that back when we meet next to share an update from that committee.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Rachel?
So at a school board meeting, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, Ms. Loft mentioned that On the Table was moving Claremont to make more seats in South Arlington. So I just wanted to know if we were going in with the assumption, like the buildings are saying where the buildings are, and if we make a big change, we may in 2 years when they do the big shuffle have to make a change again. Is that kind of, I'm assuming that's what we're assuming, but I wanted to.
Yes, yeah. The schools are staying put. There's no plans right now to move anyone. The visioning process did talk about the K-12 pathway, but there's no plans to make any moves of the schools. Yeah, we're operating with them staying put. And the visioning process, they may have some ideas around models, but those planning processes take many years, but there hasn't been anything on the table about moving either school. Melania?
In these, the goals of the process, are we going to consider socioeconomics of our population?
Yes, yep, right here, demographic diversity. Yes, I have a special table just on free and reduced lunch, and we'll look at that in the feeders. There's an imbalance there too. Yep, that's definitely going to be part of our work. Yep. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so our timeline for today, we're going to review some data, some maps, and parameters for the work. And at the end here, there'll be a chance to provide some feedback. And I'm going to give people some more processing time. So we're not going to put anyone on the spot at the end of today. You'll have a about another week and a half. But the initial feedback that this committee provides will help shape a draft proposal that I will bring back to October 13th. So at the end of this, there'll be a survey that all of you will fill out, and that will help me develop a draft proposal based on the input, and we'll look at that on October 13th. You will receive some informational resources to bring back to your community and items to solicit feedback on. That's the feedback loop 1. When we meet on October 13th, we will review the draft proposal and the accompanying data. And then you're going to plan to bring that proposal back to your communities and solicit feedback. When we meet on October 25th, we want to really kind of fine tune the proposal. So we'll review and discuss the feedback that you obtained from your community, and we'll make any adjustments if needed based on the group consensus. If we do make any adjustments, we'll want to bring that back to the community as well to share the revised proposal, or we'll confirm that the committee agreed to move forward with the original proposal as the recommended structure. On November 3rd, there's a work session on all the boundary changes. So we are adjusting the boundaries for some of our neighborhood schools as well. So at the work session, myself and my colleagues will be sharing the neighborhood school proposals as well as the immersion feeder proposals. Based on the feedback we get from the school board, if we need to, we'll meet on November 8th and can address any questions or concerns they might have. So we'll hold that date and time. But the goal is really by October 25th, about a month from now, that we will have a proposal to put forward to share. November 16th is when the superintendent will make his proposal. So whatever we recommend will go to the superintendent. If the superintendent agrees with it as is, that will get put forward. If he makes any adjustments, I will certainly confirm back with this committee. But his proposal will be shared on November 16th. There will be a public hearing on his proposal on November 30th. And then on December 2nd, the school board will act on the superintendent's proposal. Any questions on the timeline of the work? Okay. All good. All right, let's jump into it. So our current feeder structure, and I'll zoom in a little bit larger. There are 10 schools, 10 schools that are assigned to Key and 10 to Claremont. What you see shaded in the purple are the schools that are assigned to Claremont. And what you see in green are assigned to Key. And you can see Key, the Key site and Claremont site. So this is our current structure. I'll pause for any questions on our current, this map here. Okay.
Any history behind the different separation between the two for Claremont?
Yeah, so this structure, when Claremont became an immersion school in 2003, this was the structure that was established. So we've basically been operating under the same feeder structure since 2003. The only adjustment with the move of Key into the Ashland boundary for this school year, we did change Ashland to be a feeder for Key since the school was in the boundary. But that has really been the only change since Claremont became a school, the second immersion elementary in 2003. The East, kind of somewhat of an East-West division, was an early attempt to balance demographics because North-South didn't achieve that objective. But over the last 17 years, of course, there's been a lot of demographic shifts and population changes and growth. And so there's imbalances that we'll examine tonight as a result of the changes over the last decade and a half. Jillian?
Thanks. Do you have this map or a similar map with the walk zones noted?
We can. I don't have that available tonight, but we do have it. We can produce something like that. Yeah.
Okay. And the other question I had is, are we locked in to using attendance zones for other schools?
No. That's it would really take the group consensus to kind of do away with that, but it would be something that there is some flexibility, but the neighborhood schools really, when we think about something like that, about communication to our families and having everyone be aware of it. So it's something that we'd really need to all be behind, and would probably be something, but it's potential, but to be honest, is some hesitancy just thinking about how we would explain a more complex system to our families if we didn't use boundaries. Susie?
I mean, something like if you were east or west of George Mason or something basic like that. I mean, I find that people coming into kindergarten don't know what they're assigned. I've never gotten a communication based on my assigned school.
Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing. Susie?
Yes, just a quick question about projections for future demographics and stuff, because I remember the board meetings last year. At the end, it was very clear that projections are based on previous data, and with the pandemic, we don't know exactly how that is going. So just curious to know how that factors, because the numbers might shift, have shifted a little bit and might shift more.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And Susie, I think with the immersion program, since we control the number of lottery seats, we help control enrollment at our option schools. And so that's a little bit of a, we have more control over the enrollment with determining how many kindergarten classes we offer and transfers and such. So I would say option schools are not as, vulnerable to the changes that we've seen, with that. We've been able to fill our seats in the option schools. So the enrollment hasn't fluctuated to the same degree. And I think moving forward, similarly, with the set number of seats.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I move on? Okay. All right, so let's jump into the data. What I'll do is I plan to, well, first, let me put a link to this Google Doc. If everyone could open that, and I'll put it in the chat as well. I did, I'll put this in the chat, but if everyone could open that up, and I will walk us through this a little bit here.
Sorry, Jonathan, I think, I thought Susie was asking, and I have the same question. You're about to show us data.
Yes.
Is this data that's based on pre-pandemic enrollments and demographics and whatnot, or has it been updated during the pandemic? And how much uncertainty going forward is baked into this data?
Yeah, so the data you're going to see tonight is based on September 15th, 2021 enrollment. So about a week and a half ago, I waited as long as I could, and we pulled the most recent data. So all the tables have September 15th, 2021. And I would just say moving forward, we've been able to fill the seats, at the option schools. There's been a few years when some of the Spanish side seats were not filled at Key and Claremont in the past, but the English seats have always been filled. There's always been a wait list. And so I don't see, some of our elementary schools that are down 150 students, enrollment wise. I don't see that really at any of our option schools or happening at Key and Claremont, where we, can't fill, our kindergarten class. And even with attrition, we have cohort transition rates looking at like trends of kids transitioning from grade to grade. And those are relatively stable, from year to year. They're always in the 90% range from year to year.
Right, but we would be using this data to talk about things like balancing the pool of people that can lottery in and balancing demographics. So even though the pool is, the number of people, for example, right now, there are far more people in the Claremont zone and than there are in the Key zone, I believe. And so your projections on that, even though because of the lottery, the actual enrollment we can control, we can't control how the demographics will balance out and what sort of the chance of getting into the lottery will be. And so that's why the projections matter. So that's why we're asking, what are these projections based on? How much uncertainty should we take into account for these?
Yeah, so I would say when we look at enrollment, the proportionality, although enrollment is down, particularly at the elementary level, or it's lower than projected, I should say. The proportion is still, relative, where Claremont has more students in their feeder and has for several years. Moving forward, we haven't seen any indication that would change. There's really no indication of, when we look at our housing developments of, throughout the current feeder structure, that's going to really upset the balance. And even within our trends now, there's been some shifts, but not major enough that that we would see, a real major shift where Key all of a sudden has 2,000 more students in their feeder than Claremont, like a complete shift. There's no indication that would be would happen, because as things have changed, it's been somewhat proportional, just given the scale and how many schools are feeding, because we're talking about 10 schools at each. So the statistics, but no, that is a good question. Absolutely. And as we go into this, if there's a need to look at future projections some more, we certainly can. That's something that we can do as well. Excuse me. So let me give an orientation. What we're going to do, I've chunked the tables into 3 groupings. I'm going to ask each, I'm going to give you a quick orientation for a minute to the grouping, and then I'm going to give everyone about 5 minutes to go through it and then add some notes. So the first grouping of data is, and again, this is shared with you in your email, so you can pull it up, and I can also.
Sorry to interrupt, Jonathan.
Yes.
I don't think this is the link you sent, though.
There's 2 attachments in the email. The link is to add some of the notes for today. Here's.
Yeah, the link is to the document you were originally sharing.
Yes. Let me go here then. Go back to my other document here. It's Google Doc.
Yeah, this isn't the link you shared. So if you could share this, that'd be awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for. Apologies. This is the, so as you go through the data, I'm going to ask the Key and Claremont Community kind of elementary group, what struck you most? What questions do you have? And you can just type your answers. Gunston and Wakefield here, and then APS staff. And what struck you most, thinking in terms of the feeders, of course, and just adding in some bullets that these can be brief. So after I give an orientation, we'll go through, we'll do one section at a time, and we'll pause and have a quick whole group share, and then move on to the next section. So let me give a orientation.
Can you do that one more time? It didn't come through for everyone.
Yep. Yeah, I'll share it one more time. No problem. Okay.
You're chatting with everyone right now? I didn't see it.
It's in the chat, but I will post it again. Oh, send to everyone.
Jonathan, I think you have to change the permission settings.
I did add everyone to it. Let's see.
Yeah, the link's through. That's the right link now.
Yeah, I should.
Yeah, I can type. So thank you.
Oh, I'm not in it. So.
Oh, Marlene. Oh, sorry, Marlene. Yeah.
Would it be possible for someone to email that? I'm not on the device I would access the document.
I'll send it to you, Jillian.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. Okay, so it looks like everyone's jumping in. So
Jonathan?
Yes.
This is Heather. I'm going to chat you. When I log into Google, I log in with a different email. So if I could, I can't access the document right now, but let me
yes, chat me your email and I'll add it to the share. Okay. So the first table, let me just walk everyone through the first set of tables, then I'm going to give everyone 5 minutes to just process. The first table shows the schools, Escuela Key and Claremont enrollment on September 15th by neighborhood, school, and grade. The first 10 schools, these are the assigned feeders to Claremont, and you can see the enrollment by grade. Abingdon is obviously the huge feeder to Claremont. Barcroft, you can see the numbers there. These are the students from outside the feeder zone that currently attend Claremont. So Fleet is a feeder to Key, but we do have 9 students at Claremont. And this can happen for a variety of reasons. You could have a family that lived in the Oak Ridge neighborhood. They moved to Fleet. Key didn't have space for them. And even if you move outside your feeder, you're still guaranteed a spot at your current school. So the Fleet family they remain at Claremont because Key didn't have space. There's a variety of factors of the outside of feeder, but I just wanted to show that to you as well. So that's for Claremont. For Key, same thing. The first 10 are the 10 feeder schools. And then the bottom are the outside of feeder students. So the students from outside the feeder zone who attend Key. Second table, it just shows the breakdown of the enrollment, English and Spanish as of September 15th. And this is student language. Okay. Table 3 is a breakdown of that information by grade. So you can see Claremont and Key by grade of this English, Spanish, and other. Table 4, it's the same table as above, but broken down by language. So here's within the feeders. So this really gives you a breakdown of which schools and the language. You can see Abingdon, the kindergarten, 29 English side and 9 on the Spanish side for kindergarten. So it breaks it down that way. And same thing for Key. So again, these are the in-feeder schools outside of feeder. Next table is a breakdown by race, current enrollment at Key and Claremont. You can see the counts by race, a graph of that. And then the last chart is by neighborhood, school, and race. So you can see which of the feeder schools and the race of the students, race and ethnicity by feeder school. So I will give, maybe there's a few extra tables in this one. Why don't I give everyone 7 minutes to peruse these 6 tables and then add some notes, and then we'll have a discussion. So I'm gonna mute myself. If anyone has any questions, you can type them in the chat, and I'll moderate and answer any questions as you go through those 6 tables. So again, after your review, just add your bullet points into the Google Doc, and then we'll have a discussion. Thank you. Okay, about 1 minute left. And you will have more time to go through if you haven't had a chance to digest them fully.
Jonathan, can you add me to the other document too, please?
Yep, of course. The graphic organizer, Marlene? Okay. Let's go to here. All right, could I have 1 or 2 people from the Key or Claremont community share a comment, question, either anything you'd like to share with the group and just kind of put it up for discussion? If you want to raise your hand and then I'll call on you. So just skimming through, I see data for Claremont reflects families' decisions based on current location. Percentage of Hispanic students is close to 50%. Pre-key numbers seem to be an outlier. Except for pre-K, English speakers are far more than native Spanish speakers. Okay. Questions, is the goal to relieve both Key and Claremont from over capacity so the total students will decrease relative to today? What is the capacity of each school? Yes, we have that information we can share. Do we have data on families who declined spots in the immersion lottery, especially native Spanish speakers in their neighborhood schools? Yes, I do have that. That's something that I could share in an email out to the group, as well as these other questions. Can you share data by cohort of how many kids dropped from Claremont and Key given the change in location and time? Was there a drop from Northeast families respectively? That level of cohort analysis, we do have cohort transition rates. I could share percentages. I'm not sure if we could break it down by school. The World Language Program Evaluation did do some cohort analysis, so I can see what they have available. Demographic data to the feeder school, yes, we are going to look at that as well. That's going to be well in our data sets. Race and ethnicity by neighborhood school, we have that as well. We're going to look at that in a few slides or a few as well.
Hey, Jonathan.
Yes.
I really appreciate all the data and work that was put into this. If there's any possibility to get it further in advance, like 7 minutes, I was like just trying to read the first couple charts. So I would really want to, like, you put a lot of work into it. I want to give it the time that it deserves to be able to write thoughtful questions. And I couldn't get to it 2 hours before the meeting. So
No, I appreciate it. And I apologize for that. And one of the things I did.
No apologies necessary. Just, I want to make it effective for you. So.
Yeah, well, and one of the things I did to compensate is to, I'm not going to ask the survey for this group. I'm going to give everyone in the group until October 7th. So a full week and a half to kind of go through this some more before they give any input about the proposed feeder structure. I want to give people time. And if they have questions, I'm happy to answer them as well. Jillian?
Thanks. Are we also going to get revised data or answers to any of these questions before the survey
Yes, yeah, I'll be able to do, I'll be able to do most of it. Like I said, the cohort analysis by neighborhood school, probably not, but I can look through the world language program evaluation. Some of these other questions we're actually going to address tonight so that they'll answer themselves here. And then anything else that's a loose end, most of these I'm looking at, I can definitely address in the next couple of days. This is, yeah, I'm not seeing anything here aside from that cohort analysis that can't be readily put together. So I will be happy to get that out. Middle school group, anyone want to share? Oh, good, perfect, some hands. Paula?
Yeah, is there any way that you can add that planning units to that information?
Yes, I do have that. Yep, I do have that in the raw data. Yep, yeah, that raw data. So I can definitely, we can look at that. One of the reasons I didn't put it in the charts is that when I put it in, I actually even have it by civic association too. I have it by planning unit and civic association, is that the charts, span over 2 or 3 pages because, we have 70, 80, some odd civic associations, and we have 347 planning units.
Yeah,
so
I want to echo what Ethan said. I think it's very important if we can get the data, even if it's the granulated data in advance, so we can actually get very familiar with it.
Absolutely. Yep. No, and we'll have more time too on that. But yeah, no, I can absolutely look at that. Rachel, right? Yes.
Yeah, I just had a quick question that I probably should have asked earlier. In one of the documents you sent out, it said the language data listed above corresponds to the language that families reported on the lottery application, which can differ from the student language that families report when registering for school, as both are separate processes. So this apples to oranges piece kind of made me think of that. Like, where are we comparing? I registered as a Spanish speaker to, I say my child's Spanish speaking later on, like where in this data does that transition? Is it like only lottery data and then it's in schoolment, so it's separate from when you're registered in parent view?
Yeah, all of the enrollment data you guys just looked at in those 6 tables is based on student language. So that was the language that families reported when they registered their kids for school. So all the enrollment for Key and Claremont is based on that. When we start getting to the lottery data in the next data set, I'm going to preview. When families complete the application for immersion lottery, what they indicate on that lottery application versus what they register their child as, there is a difference at times. I looked at, like I did a sample for Claremont, for example. There were 16 families who indicated Spanish on the lottery application, but then when they registered for kindergarten, they put English. So it does, right at the onset, it does change things, but and many times the families haven't registered for kindergarten at the time they're applying for the lottery. So there's nothing to validate against. So you just have to take the parents what they're reporting at face value. They're reporting their child's a Spanish speaker. That's what we're going with. They're going into the Spanish side lottery. So yeah, that does play into the lottery data, and I'll walk us through it and kind of explain it a bit, but that's the best available that we have to go on.
Are
Yep.
the standards for those the same? I thought that the lottery standard is Spanish spoken at home, and the language primarily spoken by the child as well as the enrollment data space. Those are just different standards.
There's 3 questions on the registration. There is primary language spoken in the home. There's preferred method of communication, and parent language as well. So I think there's on the registration there's 3, and then the lottery just asked, I think, if the child speaks Spanish.
Wasn't it, what language does the child learn first? What language does the child speak at home?
No,
Okay.
no, can I interrupt for a minute?
Thank you, Karina.
So in the application for the lottery, there's just one question that says, is the applicant a Spanish speaker? Yes or no? And this only refers to the student. So it really is not tied into the home language or the language first acquired or the language spoken at home. It's just, does the student speak Spanish, yes or no? And that's what determines if they go into the Spanish speaking lottery or the non-Spanish speaking lottery. Then when the students register, then they are mandated under federal law and state guidelines to answer the home language survey, which are the 3 questions that are established by the state of Virginia that families answer. And those are related to the first language acquired and the home language and the preferred language spoken at home. But families don't not always answer the same, you know, families can say, yes, the applicant is a Spanish speaker, but the language spoken at the home is English. So then in the student information system, it's going to reflect differently than it did in the application for the lottery. I hope that helps. And that also, when you apply for pre-K, this is another way the families have to answer different questions for the grant that is given by the state of Virginia. So sometimes the answers in that application for pre-K does not match then the following year, the application in a school mint or the registration in Synergy. I hope that helps because everything is self-reported and it's not always consistent.
Thank you, Karina. James?
Yes, I guess I had a couple questions. Like when we're looking at some of the racial data, say with Black students, do you know the languages that are in the different communities? Because when we're promoting different programs, many of our kids in some of our communities, we always think Black like Black American. Many of our kids who are Black or in the computer is Black speak Amharic or coming from immigrant communities and speak many different languages, especially our East African students. And I'm wondering how do we account for that? Or
they're being, yes, great question. They're being captured in the other language. We do have a few, it's in the single digits, but there are some of the students you described, Black students who's, Amharic, when their parents registered, they listed their child's language as Amharic or Tigrinya or some of the other languages. Absolutely, it's a very small number, but they are, any box where you see language other, they would be, that language would be captured there. But I can certainly drill down and share the specific breakdown of Black and African American students who might be in that language bucket, the other.
Because I've been out of the elementary school for so long, what is the timeline where parents would first get this information of their options to go to an immersion school? And who at that elementary school would be contacting them, or who is responsible to get that communication out at the building?
Kindergarten information night is a big one at the end of January, where they give all the information about the different kindergarten programs. I think that's probably the biggest medium. And I know there's other methods done, but I know that's probably the primary countywide, at least, efforts, for that to go out.
Okay, and the last question, if I was a parent and I saw some of the low numbers, I may say, no, I'm not going to send my kid because there's only going to be 2 kids in that grade level. Is there any talk to those parents to say, if we have a group of students who are, that they may be placed in the same 1st grade or 2nd grade classroom? Because when I was a teacher, like Karina Cornell was my 2nd grade teacher, we would set up, and oftentimes in elementary school, divide our kids out based on race, based on reading levels. And so we were doing it to have a diverse classroom, which didn't often serve the student. So you would get kids that would go in the class and say, oh my God, I'm the only one in this classroom, versus saying, we're going to put 2 Black males, two kids from this particular country together. That may make parents feel a little better if they knew that we were being strategic in placing kids based on social, emotional, and academic support. That was just a question.
Yeah, great point. And that probably rests more with the principals and the composition of the classes in different grade levels. But that is an important point, and I think it speaks to a number of issues that I think are relevant in terms of people choosing to avail themselves and apply. And we're going to see that next in this lottery data of some of the areas where we're getting high rates of application and areas where we're not. Adon?
Just a simple question. I was wondering if the data could be, the raw data could be shared in some form. I know it's a lot of work on your part to generate these summaries, graphs, and charts. I'm assuming some of the parents and the members here have some time to dedicate to help with that effort.
There might be some of it. The issue is that it has student ID numbers and student names. And, you
Yeah,
know,
certainly we're not interested in seeing
yeah,
the actual raw
yeah,
data, but
yeah.
perhaps, you
Let me
know,
see what I can.
as low level as possible with regard to, you know, broken up by, you know, neighborhood zones
Okay.
or whatever.
Yeah, let me think about how I can do that to still remain, you know, the confidentiality, but there's definitely some possibilities there. Yep. And I'll be happy to share that back out with the group. Thank you. Okay. What I'm going to do in the interest of time is I'm going to give people an orientation to the next two. There's only 5 more tables to look at. And I'm going to let people kind of go through at their own time. I don't think we'll discuss it at our next meeting. But I want to give people an orientation to it and a chance to dig in a little bit more because I know it is a lot to go through. So the next data set gets into the lottery. And so table 7, immersion lottery, kindergarten and first grade applicants, a 3-year trend by assigned immersion school and student language. What I've done here, the reason I chose to group kindergarten and first grade together is for 2 reasons. The first grade, there is an English and Spanish side lottery. And that's the main reason. There's no testing requirements. First graders don't have to take any of the placement tests. That begins in 2nd grade. And also it builds up a little bit more of a critical mass of students to see trends. In some cases, in some schools, there's just 1 applicant or 5. And so when we get a little bit more of a pool, we're able to see a trend. So because there's an English and Spanish side lottery in both kindergarten and first grade students, if it's based on space, there's no placement test or other types of assessments that they need to take. So that's the logic behind using the kindergarten and first grade together to kind of see a little bit more of a critical mass. So this shows you the trend over 3 years of Claremont. You can see the English applications. And again, these are just applicants. These are not students who earned a spot in the lottery. These are just kids who applied to the program. So you can see the trend lines there from English to Spanish, other, and for key, you can see that as well. I put it in a chart, and then there's some notes. Families who canceled their applications before the lottery occurred are omitted from this data. So we actually do have, families who, apply at the beginning, and then later on in the process, before the Welcome Center runs the lottery, they withdraw their application from Immersion. So I didn't capture them in the data. I just included the people who, kept trying to get in all the way through at the time of the lottery. Regarding the language other, this is a student whose first language is not English or Spanish. These students are put on the English side lottery because we just, again, have a Spanish and English side. And the language data for the lottery, that corresponds to the language that families report on the lottery application, which can differ from the language. And Karina, I think, explained that well. So when you see Spanish here, these are the families who answered yes to that question. And then the others for English. And then I separated out, I went into the information system so people can see the other language. So this is based on that. The other, there's just 2 tables for the lottery, is breaking it down, a 3-year trend of applications by neighborhood school, English, Spanish. So for example, Abingdon in 2019, between kindergarten and first grade, there were 57 English applicants and 20 Spanish. And then there's the 3-year trend of applications from Abingdon. Again, these are just applications. These aren't the students who got admitted or even enrolled. This is the people who chose to, attempt to get into the program as some marker of, interest. So it's a 3-year trend. And then looking at now in table 9, we transition to the neighborhood school. This is about the pool, the applicant pool. So you can see in Abingdon, neighborhood school, kindergarten, first grade enrollment. There in the feeder zone, there were 431. Barcroft, Again, this is on September 15th. You can see the enrollment there by those language groups. This breaks it down. This is, I think, one of the most interesting charts. This basically shows those who are eligible to apply to immersion and how many actually did. I think this is one of the most interesting charts of all for people to really take a look at. So there were 314 people who could have applied to the immersion program last year. 56 did on the English side, 18% of that population applied. Spanish side, you can see here, 76, 21 applied. And you see, like a Carlin Springs, 125 Spanish speakers, 8 applied to the immersion program. So just kind of going through the data for both Key and Claremont, it kind of shows you the pool and then how many actually applied. And you can see kind of the rates. And of course, the N, in some cases like 8, it's a smaller N, so the percentage is high. But I think there's a lot of insights that can be gleaned from this that I think we can use to help shape our work. And the last table, the last 2 tables, it's a breakdown of the enrollment by race. So again, this just shows kind of the pool of applicants by neighborhood school. So these are the feeders to Claremont, and you can see, how many students in kindergarten and first grade by race. And the last chart is free and reduced lunch. I'm going to cue you down here to the bottom. So there were K-5 on 7,000 students in the Claremont feeder, 6,300. 36%, if you look at the total feeder, 36% of the students were eligible for free and reduced lunch as compared to the Key feeders at 21%. And it breaks it down by school. So you can see the K-5 total and then K-5 free and reduced lunch. So as we look to make adjustments to the feeders, we can make adjustments to try to balance this number so that we don't have such an imbalance of the free and reduced lunch in the Claremont feeders compared to Key. So that's another consideration as we think about our assignments. So this is organized by the feeder schools. This is all the Claremont feeders. This is all the Key feeders. And then this is just a chart of that data as well. So I'd like people to, take some time to go through these tables. I'm sorry I wasn't able to, again, get these further in advance. It was a fairly significant undertaking, but you will have more time. I'm not asking for any feedback for over a week and a half on this. And let me go back to the agenda. So there will be time to identify some of the challenges and issues you see with the current feeder structure. If you could, on that graphic organizer at the bottom here, what are some of the challenges you see with the current feeder structure? And as we make adjustments, this is significant here. It must, as much as we, the key piece is supporting the instructional model and our division-wide goals around equity and diversity. We need to think about VPI as well. There is a large number, as you'll see in the pre-K data, of Spanish speakers in the VPI program. And that impacts the lottery because, again, you're guaranteed admission. And must also be operationally feasible. And so as we can take these into consideration, these are the options that are on the table for the group to consider. So as we look at the Claremont feeders, Barcroft, Cardinal, Carlin Springs, Hoffman, Boston, Nottingham, and Tuckahoe can be considered for adjustments. Abingdon, Drew, Oak Ridge, and Randolph, moving them from Claremont would not be operationally feasible. And so those are kind of have to stay. These are some of the constraints and parameters for our work. I put in some cases preference Key. Preference would be to keep it as a Key, change it to being a feeder to Key, but we could consider it's remaining at Claremont. And you can see that similar notation for the other schools. When it comes to the Key feeders, Fleet can be considered, as can Barrett and Long Branch. The all other schools cannot be considered for changes as it would not be operationally feasible for APS. So we have 9 schools here, pockets of thousands of students across these 9 schools for us to make some adjustments, given our goals and looking at the demographics and looking at the balancing we want language-wise, diversity-wise, free and reduced lunch. So these are kind of the parameters for our work. Question, Ethan?
Yeah, thanks. So this is basically I'm trying to think about at the end of this process, you want a table or a vision statement if we're doing some other sort of boundary. What other supporting documents are we trying to formalize here that will help? Is there a presentation? What's the end products that you're trying to produce based on this? Is it just a table? What is it?
Yeah, we'll have a table. We'll produce. Well, I'm going to produce charts and graphs that shows you here's where we were, here's the changes we made, and how it promotes the balancing along the goals. We'll also have a rubric that kind of shows how we adhere to our goals. Our goal was to promote diversity. Here's how we promoted diversity. The Claremont feeders, 36% free reduced lunch. We were able to get it both schools. The countywide average is 29. So let's say we were able to get Claremont at 31 or 32% and Key up to the high 20s. We get them both near the countywide average if possible. So things like that, Ethan, I envision us being able to do to show how here's where our goals at the onset, here's the proposal we made, and here's how it aligns with what we set out to do.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Susie and then Jillian. Susie?
Yes, just a clarifying question. When you say it's not operationally feasible, is it distance, or I assume it's distance, but is there anything else?
Yeah, distance is a big one. Yep, distance, bus ride times. So it involves the whole network. So when we start to, if we were to create something, it not only impacts these 2 immersion schools, but the rest of our whole transportation network. So we need to think about that as well. Yeah, so that's a big driver and of it. Some of the schools here deep in the Oak Ridge, getting up to Key is not really feasible for us. And we need to get the kids on school on time so they can be engaged in learning, and not miss out. And so these are some of the limitations in that regard and things for us to consider. Jillian?
Thanks. Last year, when the school board considered the elementary school boundaries, they committed to doing a comprehensive review and readjustment of all of the elementary school boundaries starting in fall of 2022 to take effect, I believe, in fall of 2023. Is that still the plan? And assuming it is still the plan, are we making a mistake by putting a lot of basically making a lot of decisions based on this map, which we've already committed to sort of fundamentally looking at just next year?
So there's some questions about that now with us seeing the lower levels of elementary enrollment relative to projections. Not as many of the schools need adjustments as we originally thought. And so we are reassessing, and we're going to monitor enrollment this year and make a determination if we even need a fall elementary boundary process now. That's work that will later this fall, Jillian, that the 10-year projections will be produced late November, December. And that's going to help us with the decision-making of what we need to move forward with. So I think there's some question about that. Last fall, when we looked at the current projections we had, it did show that we needed to do something more comprehensive, but elementary enrollment is much lower than we anticipated. And many of the schools don't need capacity relief now. So we just need to monitor that and update our projections to see. So that is, and I guess to your point, it's fair, is if there are any adjustments, I do have the data by neighborhood and by planning units. So we can, drill down into that level if we need to help kind of see if we're making, and that would be the benefit too of having, us to.
Yeah, I'm confused because when the school board was talking about it, there were two things that were really out of whack. one was capacity and the other was demographics. And of course, the equity implications of that. We have schools with like 1%, a single digit percentage enrollments of free and reduced lunch and of Black students in particular. And then we have other schools that are, 80% free and reduced lunch, a huge demographic imbalance. I don't believe there's any change in projection of that imbalance. Are you saying staff is not going to take that into account and is only looking at capacity when deciding whether to honor its commitment to the school board next year?
I think that's going to be a bigger driver. I don't get a sense that we're going to move kids out of their neighborhood if their school just based on demographics. The boundary policy has those 6 considerations. And so I don't think one of them that would drive us to do a process. If all the other needs were met, the one consideration for demographics, I don't think would drive the board to want us to lead a whole process just based on that one piece. So I think that.
But of course, you committed to doing it, so you'd go back on the commitment to do a comprehensive boundary process because of just the capacity.
And
you also have some walk zones that aren't aligned with the boundaries and stuff like that, which are of course other aspects of those 6.
Yeah, there's a few that we're going to really monitor the enrollment this year, and in the fall, once those updated projections, that will allow us to take a holistic picture of all the boundary policy. No, that is going to be part of the work that happens this fall. But there are some things here, I think, as we get into this work that makes sense, for us to look at. I'll give one example of Cardinal. It is right adjacent to the Ashland boundary. It is, for some families, very close, almost walking distance. Does that, regardless of what boundaries happen, does that make sense? Things like that. So I think there's some work here that, regardless of whether there's a fall boundary process, that as we look at proximity, as we look at distance, as we look at demographics, that it'll help us as a committee kind of move forward with these items. So here's just a visual of what's on the table for us to consider. Again, our preference would be that these schools are assigned to Key based on proximity. The kind of 5 here in the middle, really from a transportation and other considerations, can go either way. It's feasible for them to go to Claremont or Key. Based, as we look at our other goals. Hoffman Boston, the preference would be to keep them at Claremont, but it could be considered to Key if we needed to achieve our goals. So those are kind of the 9 schools that we're talking about here, being kind of in play for this committee to think about as we're looking to shape, adjustments to the structure. I see Rachel.
I have a quick question. I know in normal neighborhood boundaries, like all the planning units have to be contiguous. They won't, like, this is something they fixed. Hoffman Boston used to have a little pocket in Douglas Park that wasn't connected. Is that anything we need to worry about? Or, like, in theory, could this look like a checkerboard? Not that we're going to do that, but like, does the purple all have to connect to one? I guess it doesn't because we moved Ashland, but initially it does.
Yeah, no, I think all of the students in these areas are transportation eligible. So I don't think it, within a school boundary, yes, we don't really, checkerboard that, but it could be, I don't think we're bound by the same contiguity when we're talking about option schools, here. No, I think, so I can't see the name.
Maybe it's me.
Yeah, sorry, Paula. Yes, it was coming to me. I was drawing a blank. Sorry.
That's okay. So obviously, when you see tables 10, you have a very strong correlation with distance, right? With the terms of the applicants and obviously the people that actually register in the schools. Is there a way that we can look at the time, like the hub stop, kind of like how long it's taking the buses to get there, and all that, to take in consideration that part?
Yeah. Kristen and I can get together and work on that and share back with the group. Are you thinking like in terms of like how long does it take students from Nottingham to get to Claremont right now?
Yeah, for example, like
Okay.
that is a huge issue for a lot of families, even for their own transportation, just to get to meetings and this and that. And so obviously distance is really important for families to apply and to stay in school.
Sure, sure. Kristen, I would say, right, the bus ride times are going to fluctuate for a lot of different things, right, with the traffic and.
Oh yeah, just the averages.
Yeah, the
I mean,
average. Yeah, sure.
yeah,
But
yeah,
we can share something. I think that's doable. Yeah.
Well, and just to clarify, are we looking for bus ride times or for other travel time? You mentioned parents.
Well, I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking about average time to get to school. You can think about, like, let's say people around the Discovery boundary, how long it takes for them to go into Key, and how long actually the kids that ride the bus go to Key. So it's two different parameters, but if you have it, it will be great to see, because it's a great deterrent, I think, for families to apply either way.
Yes. No. Thank you. Is that Marlene or Mary? I see an M. Oh, Marlene. Hi.
Hi, yeah, I think just to kind of piggyback to the comment before. So one thing is the travel time for the students and the impact that that would have on families choosing to participate. But the other thing that I'm experiencing since the move is how families are impacted by the new, the travel times and the lack of access to public transportation, or the difficulty accessing public transportation so they can participate in school life. So as you know, we've had a vibrant community, and what I'm noticing is that it is more difficult for families to come to the school, and we're not even having events, but that has been mentioned by families that it takes them at least 2 bus rides, and it just takes more time. So I wonder how that in the long term is going to preclude some of our Latino families from participating in or signing up for Escuela Key, knowing that they wouldn't be as involved as they would like to be in their children's education.
Absolutely, Marlene. Yes, no, that is important. And we one of our key considerations here is transportation equity as we think about the families, in the communities we're serving here and their ability to get to their assigned school. So as we look at, the schools here in the middle for Barcroft in terms of the public transportation access, getting to Key versus getting to Claremont, I think, things like that we'll need to consider. And we can look at some of the countywide maps show the public transit lines to kind of weigh that as we're weighing some of these decision points for the assignments. Absolutely. So next steps, continuing to review the data and maps. Again, just looking for input, and I will preview the survey quickly. So the purpose is to gather initial input on adjustments to the current feeder structure. And basically those 9 schools, after you review the data, after you send any questions my way, and I will send up follow-up data for it based. I'll review the questions in the Google Doc and give people some more time. But just to give an initial input as to these are the Claremont feeders, should they remain Claremont or what should transition to Key? This is just for me to go back and rerun the data with a draft. So like if 85% of the people say Cardinal should be assigned to Key, that will get put into the modeling. So I will look for the majority from this group as I review responses from the 20 plus people in this committee. And I will use that to build a draft proposal to at least get us something to react to at the next meeting. And I'll share the data of the responses, but the responses you provide by October 7th will then be used to shape the model that I bring back to the group on October 13th. And I'll have the data to share so we can see what that would look like. So that is the survey. There's a handout here. I'm actually in the process of it's in translation right now to Spanish. So I want to get that out to you guys by midweek, by hopefully the end of the day, Thursday, so that you have a handout that the PTAs can circulate around. It's basically an update on this document, but I want this translated in Spanish, and and then there's at the bottom of this, there's a survey for parents, and I did QR codes and custom links. So if they can't hyperlink on the document, they can type in this URL. So the Claremont community, they can complete this, and the surveys are the same. It's just that I want to share the results with each of you. So the Claremont reps, you'll have access to the survey that the Claremont community completes. And same thing with Key, same thing with Gunston and Wakefield. And the Spanish survey will be complete too by midweek. So I have a couple deliverables for you guys by midweek. I'll send out any additional data to respond to your questions, and I'll also get the Spanish version of this handout as well to you for circulation to the community so that they're aware. And when we come back on the 13th, we'll review the draft based on your feedback, and then also each of you to share feedback you've gotten from your community based on the survey results. Any questions about kind of next steps, Jillian?
Yeah, I have a couple concerns with the timeline.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of really good questions have come up without answers tonight.
Mm-hmm.
For example, just on the transportation side, it's really important to consider transportation, in particular public transportation, the access to schools, and we haven't discussed it at all. It looks like both Claremont and Key are served by the same bus, the 75 bus, which of course serves the same route. And there's a couple other buses that run up George Mason, but I think there are a lot of issues. We haven't actually gotten any discussion on the committee and really been able to hear other viewpoints. And then on top of that, I think you're asking us to go back to our communities and get some feedback, but we don't have questions answered, and we've only got about 2 weeks. And I find that engaging our communities on very shortened deadlines like this really restricts who we hear from. And in particular, we're more likely to hear from the parents who have the time, who are have more access to the technology and are more plugged in. And it's harder to get a good representation from the whole community on this compressed timeline. So I have a lot of concerns there, and I also knowing that sort of that draft one often sets the standards for everything that's going on, that everything that comes after it. So I have a lot of concerns that draft one would be prepared after so little actual discussion and back and forth and meaningful engagement with the community.
So I think a couple things. One, I can definitely in the package we send out include some links to showing the public transportation network for those schools in the middle in particular that we're talking about. I don't think we need to look at the transportation network in Jamestown because that's not for consideration, but for the schools under consideration, I definitely think providing you with some resources to look at that to help in the weighing of the opinion. This is just the first feedback. We're not making any, there will be another feedback loop too for people to provide. So if people need more time to give feedback, no decisions are going to be made on October 13th. No final decisions. It's really a working draft, and throughout the month of October, people will have a chance to share their feedback with you and with the committee. So we will, this next meeting, when we meet again on October 13th, there's going to be no real decisions, final decisions. It's really working through a draft. But I hear you. If we need to, more time, we can take more time, and extend some of the, work from the 13th to the 27th, if we need to. I'm definitely open to that. I've really dedicated the month of October for feedback and helping us work through as a committee to shape the proposal. for the whole month of October. This is kind of just the first round, so to speak. James?
I was just wondering, we can't, there's no time we can meet really in person if people want to meet to kind of have some of these discussions. Because I mean, I think this is a good group. People have very different lenses to look at some of the discourse.
Yeah, we have set up virtual. I don't know everyone's comfort level for meeting in person or in everyone's situation, so I wanted to be respectful of that. With things kind of increasing, and we're a group of 25 or so for that. I mean, I'm happy to send out a survey to the group and kind of get a pulse, James, to see if people would prefer that, and if everyone's comfortable, something I can work on. But I know with family demands and needs, and this might be. But I'm open to it. I think you raise a good, point, and I'm happy to at least ask the group on that. Rachel?
I'm just a little worried if we communicate a survey with no information about what happens to current families, that the first reaction is going to be, don't move me, don't move me, don't move me. And we're not going to actually get the input we need about future enrollment.
So how about, and that's I think a fair point. How about then if on the survey that I have to the families, the first questions, what concerns and questions do you have about the structure? And why don't I'll take these questions off, because I agree with you. I think it's premature for folks. Why don't we just try to get a pulse on the concerns they have and the questions they have, and make sure that everyone has the information they need to provide meaningful feedback to the reps. And then we kind of push this back, to after October 13th, we can maybe share these kind of questions with them. But this will help. I think this will help the committee, and this will help the group kind of flushing this out some more, working through our questions, working through our concerns. And then we can kind of get it at a deeper level at our next meeting from the committee. Is that, I'm hearing that would be, I think, responsive to a lot of the questions and concerns I heard from several tonight. So I will do that. I will remove this bottom part of the questions, so that we're just really seeking, this first round of feedback is really about the questions and concerns they have, and making sure that as we go through this work, even before we develop the draft proposal, that we're being responsive to that and to this committee of people looking at the data some more. So let's do that then. We'll table this kind of piece until we have more time as a group to work through the transportation, work through some more of the questions and concerns. And but if people could, what would really be helpful is between now and when we meet next, to go through the data tables and add to this graphic organizer. And I will look at that and send out any additional data needs, and also summarize some of the themes I saw here. So when we meet next, we can make sure that we have more discussion and more time to go through all those concerns before people are giving kind of input for an initial draft. So we'll make that adjustment. And I'm very sorry we went over our time. I appreciate everyone staying with us. And I will follow up on those items. And then I think we had, I saw one question.
Yeah, Jonathan, it's Paula again.
Yes, hi, Paula.
Just a quick question. How much, so we have a PTA meeting next week. And since we have a very, very short timeline, how much of this can we share with our community?
Yeah, I'll go back through the handout. I think everything on the, most of the items on the handout are still relevant. It gives people a background of the work. It shows a couple of maps, and it gives them links to, sorry, I'm skipping around on folks here. Here we go. So it gives an overview of the background of the process, who's on the committee, what the goals are of the committee, our timeline, our review of the current map. I think all of this, and then just a couple tables, and I put, a link. If you'd like to see all of the data tables that were shared, you can click here. So I think I think this part, the first set of the items is good foundation for you to share, the PTA to share next week. I think this bottom part on the limitations is also, but I think anywhere like with the feedback, I just will shape the survey. So I think everything on this handout, once it's translated into Spanish, is good to go. I just need to remove those questions that ask people about which school, the feeder structure. So yeah, I'm comfortable with all of this going. I think it's good background to bring people up to speed on the work and who's on it, who's on the committee, and kind of the timeline.
Okay, and finally, when we're thinking about these schools, the GELC schools, is there any limitation on, like, if we think, oh, all these GELC schools in the Claremont feeder, they should go to Key, and then the other ones don't move? Is there any limitations on the balance at all? Or this is just something that you will be showing us like with additional models? Like, I assume that if I move Barcroft to Key, it has to compensate somewhere. Or how should we think about that when we are doing that analysis, besides just saying, well, for socioeconomic, it seems like these schools should go there to try to balance on reduced lunch and so on?
Yes, no, absolutely. I think the data tables will help. And then some of that is my work. But as you go through the data tables, one simple thing, for example, let's just use the example, if Carlin Springs was a feeder to Key, you're increasing, see this 250 number for Key? If Carlin Springs was shifted to Key, this number would increase to 375 of like eligible, and then this number would drop, the 444 would drop, 125 students. So as you're thinking about the schools, the 9 schools that are in play, if you go to like this table here, you can see how if you move, Carlin Springs, or if you move one of the schools, how it would impact the total pool. So I think table 10 is probably, one of the better ones to start with. And then there's also the demographic one rate below it with race as well. So you can see how moving, Carlin Springs or Cardinal to Key would change the applicant pool at Key. And likewise for any of the other options. So that would be my recommendation, is to, as you're thinking about the 9 schools, to just look at the enrollment number, and then
you want to try to keep kind of like those numbers.
Yes, yeah, this is the data we're going to use. Yeah, and if there's as I go through the graphic organizer, if there's some additional pieces that people need to help make an informed opinion, I will, provide that. But for right now, for what we have here, I think this is a good starting point to see how we can, strike a better, balance. Yeah. So, did that answer your question, Paula?
Yeah,
Okay,
kind of.
great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. All right. If any other questions come along, just send them to me an email. I'll answer your questions. I'm happy to talk by phone if people want to have a conversation this week and work through any other details. Committed to being responsive to everyone's needs and making sure that everyone has the information they need to feel informed and give their opinion, an informed opinion in this process. So we'll make the adjustments I discussed and go from there. But sorry again for keeping everyone long, and we'll talk again via email soon with those follow-up items. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Good night.